Well, it has been a hot minute since our last episode, which we will share about as we begin. There's been a lot that's happened in the last couple of weeks. So, thank you to our listeners for your patience in this next episode coming out. It's going to be a really juicy one, and I'm really liking that we're leaning into this to come back and start chatting. This is the Wisdom of Womanhood podcast. And I love how more and more it's like the Wisdom of Humanity podcast. Obviously, we definitely hold a space that is focused on the feminine and support for the feminine. But there's so many conversations in here. So, regardless of whether you do identify as a woman, if you are listening to us, you are completely welcome here. The conversations are for everyone. My name is Showy Moon. And I have beautiful Pippa here with me again today.
Hey guys.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey.
Um, so yeah, it's been a few weeks since we've last recorded, due to Pippa being away, me being away, Pippa being away, life happening. I'm moving house. I have two kids' birthdays this month. There's been a lot. And so before we go into our topic, we're going to give you just a little bit of an update. Because although we're here kind of holding space for the conversations, we know that the more that you get to know us and connect to us, and we show up really vulnerably and kind of let you know where we're out at in our constantly evolving personal development journeys and lives, then it helps you to feel more connected to us. So, yeah, we might give you some life updates because it's been a little while.
Mm. I was just thinking about when we started this podcast, and it was right at the beginning of my pregnancy. So I feel like the podcast has evolved with my pregnancy. So I just think it's really beautiful how, like, now I'm in third trimester, which is just absolutely fucking wild because it's gone so quick. And even like I'm noticing when I'm talking, I'm having to like slow down as well because of my breath, and my lungs are getting obviously pushed up. And it's hard for me because I love talking so much. So sometimes I'll be having like a blah 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 conversation with Chris, and I'll go, I just need a minute. And then take a minute to breathe. So without going into the details of the transition, Chris and I going in, because we haven't signed NDAs with something that we're moving into, but we've been calling in a new opportunity for Chris and myself and our family, and that happened in the last few weeks. So we had to go over to Brisbane to just some education conferences, and it was really good because a lot of it was about mindfulness, mental health, in schools. And I know Shao and I were in touch when I was there and saying all these, amazing teachers that were coming in and educators, and it was good to get their contacts and keep in touch with them and follow them on Instagram and things like that. So there's a lot of changes happening with schools, especially with the AI, the rise of AI. There's a lot of talk about the AI, the pros and the cons of AI, things like that, and then obviously the mental health side of things and what they're introducing in schools. And it's just really cool to see people are really focusing on that as well. So we had a great time in Brisbane, and it was just like good to be back in one of my favorite places in the world anyway. But just the transition, especially going in, I've just been today really reflecting on not recording the last couple of weeks and reflecting on what's happened in those couple of weeks. And I just feel like this maiden to mother element, that the rites of
Mm,
passage we spoke about, at the beginning of the podcast, is it really is happening. It really is a transition for me. And I think
mm,
I'm very extroverted. I love people. I love talking, as you all know. I love, I just love people. I'm extrovert. And since really progressing into my pregnancy, I'm becoming more introverted. And it's really interesting because I think that's my body and my energy, my hormones, everything, nesting me into that little love bubble that everyone tells me about when baby's here. So it's been interesting to watch that. And even for the first time ever for me, being away from home, I love travel. It's really important for me. I love traveling. I love getting on an airplane and going somewhere. Being in Australia just recently was very different because I missed my home comforts. I missed
mm,
my ball. I missed my pillows for sleeping at night. I just missed being in my nest. So it was really
mm.
interesting to have those you know, those thoughts and reflections. And yeah, like I said, it's been a hot minute. It's been like what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been nice, and we got this new opportunity starting. So Chris starts a new job on the 1st September, which will include me next year after having a few months off with baby. But it's very exciting. So once we've signed NDAs and contracts and stuff, I will be full board, just being like, it's this.
Super exciting. And I feel as if this is a theme that has come up with so many people is radical change happening in life.
Mm,
Radical. The amount of people that are changing up businesses and where they're living and the way they're doing things and relationships and the intensity of the personal development work and just feels like quite rapid, radical change happening, which can be very uncomfortable.
yeah.
It can be really uncomfortable. And, I feel as if there's this collective message of, just learning to ride the waves, like learning to ride the waves of personal and collective evolution. There are definitely things happening on a wider scale that are, major upgrades and major shifts. And, if you're listening to this and you're like, holy shit, actually, if I look back at the last month, there's been a lot and the energy's been big, and I felt this kind of uncertainty or discomfort within my system or within my practical life. Stay with it, and know that there's definitely a lot of this happening with a lot of people. Yeah. Um, so on that, uh, fuck, I feel like a different person to a few weeks ago.
Both
Um,
like transformed in those
yeah.
couple of weeks, like.
Yeah, I really do. Yeah, so I'm in the absolute really in the middle of moving house. And this moving house is really big for me. So I've been living in this house for 7.5 years. And when I moved into this house, it was with my kid's dad. We were still married at the time. And my youngest was only about 5 months old. He wasn't even walking. This is the house that he learned to walk in. This has been the only home I've lived in, since he was little. Yeah, and it's held so many memories. And then obviously through the separation, and then yeah, that period of time was some of the most challenging months that I've gone through ever in my life. So that is here. I've often mentioned this in conversations around postnatal depression and mental health and everything like that. Like my kitchen floor days is the ones after the separation. And it was that kitchen right behind me, where I would just lie on the floor and cry, not be able to function and still trying to do all the things. And then my other relationship, 2.5 year relationship, and then all of the fucking healing that has taken place in this house. Like I've been doing healing work in this house for the last 5 years. People's lives have changed. Like so many people's lives have changed in this home. Drastic, radical changes. And mine, obviously, like so much of my own healing has happened in this home as well. And yeah, so it's a really beautiful like process of reliving some of those memories. And as I'm packing up my house, I'm finding all of these old memories and photos and letters and then deciding, what to hold on to, what to let go of. And there's this real like process of grief and of rebirth. And it's quite beautiful and a lot, because in amongst doing that, I'm also working and raising the kids and doing like all the things. So yeah, just navigating through that. And I think it wasn't really until I went down, I spent 4 days in Nelson, visiting my best friend down there, my beautiful friend Natalie, for her hens do. And then also Michael and I spent 4 days, my partner and I spent like 4 days down there together. And it wasn't until I was with him that I just fucking crumbled.
Yeah.
Like I realized how stressed I was, and I realized I was the most stressed I've been in like years, probably like my last breakup. which was like 3 years ago, which was quite stressful, obviously, relationship breakup. There was just a lot. And it was a beautiful separation, but still there was a lot. Yeah. And then when I was with him, I was just like, like, oh
Yeah,
my
the
gosh, I have no
release.
capacity. I'm at my limit. Like I was crying like every day, and it was it was just a lot. And then and the vulnerability of that, and then like one of the conversations we had is like, I've been crying every single day for the last week. He's like, babe, you got to tell me. And I was like, I just kind of didn't even really realize until I was physically with you, being in that emotional safe space of someone that could just hold you. And yeah, it was quite a lot. And then in there, we did a whole like relationship check-in, because we haven't had a nice block of time together. We hadn't until since we're in Australia. Did a relationship check-in and navigated through some quite challenging, beautiful conversations, because my capacity was so low. I was like really on the brink. Like I was definitely, my emotions were more on the surface. And so he was learning to hold me when I was kind of in that place, which is not familiar for us because I regulate myself really well. And then calling one another out on something. So it was kind of like a really different, beautiful, natural transition that you will go through if you're in a conscious relationship, which is navigating through like what we do when we go into conflict, how we support one another. And so it was amazing. Like it was really fucking incredible. But it was a lot, and a lot came up for me, and it was really, really vulnerable. And a lot of like old trigger stuff came up. And so I kind of like left that, and I was tender as fuck, like really tender, and like quite overwhelmed with everything. I'm sorting and organizing in my life right now. So probably about a week ago, I've come out the other side. I'm okay. Like I've got the house sorted, like it was literally like everything is changing. On the same day, I got the keys to my new house. I got the keys to my new car, and I went to my new gym all on the same day. It was like last weekend, like just so much is happening, and I'm organizing and sorting. Yeah, and then my oldest daughter turned 13, which was it's been a huge process. Oh my goodness, like it's been so much for like her, and then for me supporting her, and supporting her through like some conflict that she was having with me, because I'm still captain of the ship, and, parenting her through some decisions. And then as it does happen when there is love there, we've just become even closer, her and I, yeah, it's been so beautiful. And then it's one of my other kids' birthdays on Tuesday. When it's just a lot sometimes. So yeah, it's been a lot in my life. And so yeah, thank you to everyone that has just supported us through not recording in the last few weeks. There has been a lot that's been happening, and we love this space and we treasure it so much. And just know that whenever we can, we're here, and we are committed to that weekly. It's just that sometimes life has other plans.
I just love how you've kind of set up the episode for our topic, because you mentioned a couple
Mm-hmm.
of things there. You went down to Nelson, and when you're in the space with Michael, that was when like your soul could just be whoosh, held
Oh,
in such a space. And isn't
yeah.
that kind of, you mentioned about consciousness and the depth and like that,
Mm-hmm.
even though like, a lot of times we can think sex is the solution to like feeling like shit, like that, because you want endorphins and things like that. But it's like coming into a space with a partner that you can be held and be intimate in different ways. So Shawi and I are going to be talking about Tantra today and the origins of Tantra. I know it's more Shawi's thing, so I learn a lot from Shawi, but I think moving into that with Chris and I, moving into Tantra, and how it's actually not about sex, it's about intimacy in different ways. And you kind of have touched on that with that whole intimacy with Michael, like being
Absolutely.
the consciousness, the depth of that consciousness, and the depth
Mm-hmm.
of the intimacy in a different way, that the being
Mm-hmm.
held, being touched,
Mm-hmm.
touch is such a powerful, powerful thing for humans. And I think tantra's overlooked. Like you see tantra as like a sex is here as the tree, and you have like tantra as a branch, and it's not really. It's kind of like, it can be in a link to be like, okay, well, it could lead to sex, but it's not the
Mm-hmm.
goal, is it? It's not the goal to be,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're going to orgasm out of this. No, it's not actually. It's
Mm-hmm.
a different type of intimacy. It's the
Mm-hmm.
consciousness intimacy, isn't it? So I'll let you kind of give your beautiful flavor to it, because it is something that I'm really interested in at the moment, because I'll speak my truth always. Our sex life is very different now because of my body changing so much. My beautiful belly is getting so big. I can't lie on my back. So sex positions are becoming really difficult, and just the feelings of my own, you know, woman bits. It's like it's all changing and stuff. So I did have a really lovely conversation with Chris about like the Tantra being really important to me. So we've been doing a lot of that recently, and it's been really nice to have that real intimacy and what being touched in certain areas and what that brings up for me and things like that as well, and with him too. So I'd love to get more tips, especially like for listeners. We'll go through some like tips for each other, and then some like beginners tips, I think, as well, because some people are probably like, what, where do I start? What do I do? And how, moving into things like this can be uncomfortable. Tantra can be uncomfortable for some couples. And I think how do we manage that? How do we navigate that as well?
I really love the beginning to this conversation that you brought in, because there's definitely a lot of misconceptions. I mean, even within the space of like sex in itself and whatever people's concepts are of sex, which will be one word could be interpreted in so many different ways, depending on someone's background, and their belief systems and the society they live in, and whatever imprints are coming in from there, whether there is sexual trauma within their epigenetics, whether they've experienced sexual trauma. That one word in itself can bring up so many emotions and ideas. And so, as we kind of dive further into Tantra as a means of learning about oneself and about another, really allowing kind of even that term sex to sit there and be whatever your perception is of it, but like be curious about what else it could mean, what else it could be as we kind of go forward. And so I did I want to like wind even further back, because I feel as if my life is so ingrained in the art of Tantra in so many ways. And as you beautifully kind of just dropped in, like, what does it even look like and feel back if you go back? And so I think for me, the discovery of intimacy and intimacy with self as well as intimacy with another um, definitely came from like being attuned as a Reiki practitioner and just getting used to what the energetic body feels like. And it's a really great place to start this explanation, attempt to explain what Tantra could be in someone's life. Because essentially it's bringing in all of the parts of self, the physical body, yes, and the physical senses, yes, and also the energetic body, and also the non-physical senses, our intuition, like all of these parts of us that are here and we are able to access. And I truly do believe that anybody can access these experiences and these sensations of being in the physicality of humanness, because I was going to say like in the body, and sometimes we're kind of a little bit out of the body. But really, really becoming aware of everything that we are. And that's kind of how we started off, is becoming attuned to like how my body responds to certain things, like how my body responds to breath, how my body responds to gentle touch, how my body responds to different people, how my body responds to like different sensual things as well, like how my body responds to different scents. And that's kind of a really good way to start journeying into some of these practices, as opposed to I'm going to do a Tantra practice to get X, Y, and Z out of it, which is often like have better sex, have more orgasms, be closer to my partner. Like, let's get rid of the end goal of journeying into exploring Tantra and start with a curiosity of what it means to be you, because what it means to be you will be completely different to somebody else. And also you can practice all of these things yourself. You do not need to be in a partnership, which is like what I love about this. And so essentially when we start to look as this, not only with the practices that can be involved in it, but Tantra as a way of living and being. More than anything else, it is about presence, being in presence and complete connection to self. And so what that means is quietening down the mind, which likes to jump back to the past and constantly repeat the things that we fucked up and the things that we, that we could have done differently, and the things that we're still attached to that are maybe positive, and all the things that replay, because then when we're in the past, we're not in the present. And then also all of the potential possibilities in our future paths. When we're stuck in those, we're not in the present moment. We're not actually here. And so what we're aiming to do with these practices and this way of being is to be more here, be more in these moments, and be curious about what every single one of these moments can give us and gift us. And when we start to bring in our awareness of our senses and of the breath and of ourselves as sexual and sensual beings, then we start to tap into higher frequencies of energy. We start to tap into the potential for experiences that you've probably never had before. We start to push past the parameters of how much pleasure maybe our body has been able to hold before. And I think that's something that along the way for me, I just keep being curious around how much more present can I be? How much more can I feel? How much more pleasure can I experience? How much more connected could I be to myself or to someone else? And so I always really like inviting that in as you start to, if you are listening and you're like, I really do want to get into practicing some things, going in with that as your intention is going to gift you the best experiences. And there's a massive trust and surrender to that. And I love what you said before, Pippa, like, is that, we've had conversations around sex before, and the attachment to the orgasm, the attachment to like the mind-blowing thing we think we see in the movies and the books and everything like that, and wanting a certain response out of your partner or wanting a certain response from your body. As soon as we start putting all these attachments, then we're potentially missing something that could be even better. Like, I can hands down say some of the most profound and erotic experiences I've had have not been the ways I thought I would have had them a couple of years ago. I actually didn't even think that they were possible. I'll give an actual example. So this kind of, I know that a lot of this is quite out here, but I just really wanted to drop that. If we kind of bring it back into here, an example would be, yeah, so the first times that I started having energetic orgasms, so without any clitoral stimulation, without any internal stimulation, like no body stimulation at all, complete energetic orgasms, was through the breath, using the breath. I was literally just in a breathwork practice, and then I was like, holy fuck, like I'm really turned on, and there's like stuff moving through my body. And so I'd done a lot of work with the breath before and working with sexual energy. And then when I met Michael, I might have shared this one before, I don't remember. When I met Michael, who is a rebirthing breathwork facilitator, so obviously does a lot of work with the breath as well, and is also very sexually attuned. And this is like the first time we're meeting in person. We already knew, like we were like, and he just said to me, would you like to drop into some breath with me? So I sat with him, and still, we were both fully clothed, and we went through the beta breath together, and we breathed and went into breath holds together. And when I share some practices in a moment in this episode, I'll give you some practices for using the breath. And because I'd done these practices, and also had he, it's not just about breathing, it's about the fact we are literally building up sexual energy as we're breathing together. We're very conscious about what we're doing. For us, we didn't need to consciously say that because we knew us. However, it's having those conversations around, let's, see if we can just build in some, so building up sexual energy in every breath in and every hold. And then he pulled me up onto him. And so the first orgasms that I had with him, the first really intense, like floods of pleasure, were through no stimulation, no penetration, completely using the breath. And these were ejaculatory orgasms. right? And this is, and I like to drop these things in because this is what is possible. Full energetic pleasure that then can have the most profound, beautiful things happening through the body. And that was one part of it. And even more so was the heart connection that was taking place.
Yeah.
Like our hearts were completely, with every breath, with every act of absolute presence with one another, our hearts were opening more and more and more. And it was this very energetic, like, commitment, the soul commitment of like, I fucking see you. And I'm allowing myself to be seen. And that's so much of what Tantra is I am allowing myself to be seen in all of my messiness, and all of my imperfections and everything I am today in these moments. And also, I am having the courage to see you, not as a glorified version of you. It actually makes me really emotional. It's making me emotional. Like, not as this glorified version of you, but as this beautifully imperfect incarnation of who you are right now. I see you, I allow you to see me, and let's dance together,
Yeah.
in the act of love and with erotic energy and surrender to it. And let's journey in together to see what might be here. And that's the essence of what this is. And so, yes, it will inevitably lead to sexier sex. Absolutely. However, it's about the heart. It's about the heart, and it's about presence, and it's about being seen and seeing yourself and allowing yourself to completely see the reality of who another is. And of course, that's why I love it so much. And like you were even saying before, there's a certain level of vulnerability that is here as an invitation if you choose to explore Tantra. Um, because I get it, there were definitely times in my life where I did not want to be fucking seen. And I wasn't willing to see myself. And through just gently allowing those pieces to be buried that were sabotaging my own life, and that were there for me to heal. I know I came to this place of actually being like, I'm fucking ready to be seen. Like, I'm so fucking ready, and I'm ready to see someone not as the potential of who they could be, and not as the mirroring of me and them, but just truly as them. And that's the gift that is here and available if you choose to explore it and go into it. And so, yes, there's vulnerability, but fuck, what you can learn from yourself and diving into these places will blow your fucking mind. Like, it really will. Like, I think why those emotions are coming up before is because my body actually went back to when I was in Nelson with Michael, and like, that's what it was, like, the fully fucking being seen, and we actually, he won't mind me sharing this. No, he won't. He talks about our stuff all the time on his podcast. So we had this, we went into some conflict, and, like, I say conflict, it was like very, very mild. However, I'm also not someone that's going to be here and be like, oh yeah, conscious relationships are just always like light and fluffy and blah blah. No, like, we're in it to heal parts of ourselves that have come into the relationship to be healed. And so it was like a minor thing. And it was beautiful. And we like came back together and we spoke about it. And I went and like had a shower and moved some anger through that was in my body, anger towards me in those moments. And then that evening, we went into one of the most, actually the most vulnerable and pleasurable experience I've had. And I've had a lot of pleasurable, vulnerable experiences. And he actually, like, we were sitting across from each other on the bed, and there's beautiful distinct things you can do with energy. There's these cosmic orgasms that you can create together, where you actually activate one another's chakra points all the way up through the body, through connecting your root chakras and breathing together and all these things. So we were sitting facing one another in the bed, and he actually had asked me to be completely like spread eagle and like completely worshipped my pussy. Like, worshipped and like stared completely into the vulva, like staring into the eye of the universe. And took his time and was like slow and, found all of the places and was like just, and really in this way of just like receive my absolute fucking adoration for you as the woman,
Yeah.
you as the oracle.
Mm.
And then took me into like peaks within peaks within peaks of orgasms and held me there. And it was fucking beautiful. And then going into penetration where it was like, it literally feels as if like he's penetrating my heart,
Yeah.
and then there's practices that are in Tantra where if you're in a heterosexual relationship, when it comes to vagina penis penetration, with the breath and with working with energy, you bring the energy up through their cock, internally into you, up through into your
Yeah.
heart, back into their heart, and then back down through their body. And these are the practices that we use. And so in doing that, again, you're literally fucking activating your heart chakra. You're healing your heart through sex. Who the fuck doesn't want to do that?
I know.
Yeah, and so yeah, I wanted to like share some experiences where someone might be there going, fuck that, I don't want someone like looking into my pussy. And like, and I get that. Again, it would have been me not that long ago. I've done like yoni eye gazing, I've done like lots of things in myself to be at that point. And also like it was uncomfortable, but I thrived off it being uncomfortable. And so I love that with Tantra, we blow up what can be possible. Like what could be possible, just go more and more and more and more and more. Yeah. So I'll kind of like pause there.
Oh, I love it.
And yeah, and then I'd love you to share anything. And then I can give some practices that people can actually explore with as well.
Yeah, I think for Chris and I, it's definitely a intimate. Chris and I just have this connection that's very just how would he describe it? Like we talked about the other day, it's like we could literally be thinking the same thing and we're not even in the same room, and then we'll come together and
Mm,
go da da da, and he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like I've just, it's like, I'm not saying that's tantra, but I'm just saying that brings us together in a way where we're like, it doesn't have to be about the sex, and a lot like
mm,
for Chris and I, we're very similar in a way where we like the touch, we're very sensual, you know. It's something that we want to lean into more because I think, our sex life's great and it gets better and better. We said this, like we've been together almost 6 years and it's just always got better and better. And so I think the tantra side of it is more just from that we're both deeply spiritual and deeply conscious people that I was going to lead into a question for you. If I
mm,
was, if I was listening right now to this podcast as a woman or a man, and I'm thinking to myself, Tantra seems really spiritual and Tantra seems very whatever. You know, what would what would we both say? I'm going to ask you first, shall we? What advice would we give to someone who's thinking right now, well, my husband would never do something like that. He's not spiritual. He's not this. He's not that. He's all about sex. How do we advise and guide relationships that, like you said, it's a very vulnerable thing too, and like for more so a man to be in that vulnerable state of being held for tantra and things like that, I think it probably would deem quite difficult for some couples to get to
mm,
those places because it does seem very spiritual, but it's actually it is spiritual, but it's not. It's something
mm.
that as humans we should all aim for, really, that having tantra as part of our practice
Yeah.
as couples, as if anyone thinking going couple counseling or going for therapy, like go try some tantra out. It's like there's different elements to it. So if someone was listening right now and they said, how do I manage that in my relationship? What
Mm.
advice would we give?
Well, I work with couples and I give them practices to use. And a lot of these couples are not spiritual. They simply want better connection. And in that question, you said they just like the guy just is like, I just, want to be having better sex, or I want to have, this is the fucking way.
Yeah.
Like it is inevitable that you will have better sex because you've got better connection. You cannot force better physical experiences without creating a stronger connection, particularly if you are the lover of a woman, because our emotions are completely related to how we show up in our sexual self. Where we are like hormonally, in terms of like how safe we feel, our body will respond to it in different ways. Like the pussy will not open in the same ways if you are not feeling safe and emotionally in a place of being open and willing. But also the practices that I give, like to often the really basic ones, they've got nothing to do with like spirituality or like spiritual practices. They're very, very practical. And so they're easy to do. You can progress them into different places. But at the end of the day, you have to have two people that are wanting to have a better relationship
Yeah.
and better intimacy and better wellness and better mental health. So you're not only going to be able to convince someone that actually wants to be there. I will like say that to start off with. However, if it is someone that they're like, oh, they think it's like woo woo, I'm like, well, it ain't.
Yeah.
Like and the level of which you can take it to can become very cosmic and very spiritual. However, that doesn't necessarily need to be the path. There are things that you can explore within the elements of Tantra that are that can give you beautiful connection and experiences without going into a lot of practices that might be deemed as more spiritual practices. And
Mm.
that's what I love about it, is like I've never had a couple come to me that I wouldn't recommend some of these things to. And then there are those that I'm like, great, we can also like put this and this and this in, because they're already on the path. They've already done some breath work. They already, might have had some Reiki, and things like that. So they're a bit more open up to different things. But the range of the different things that you can experience are just so incredible. And the thing is with practices like these is that you've got nothing to lose.
Mm.
You've got nothing to lose from trying out some of these things and integrating them into your life, but you've got everything to gain.
Yeah, and I also think it's important, like you mentioned before as well, is that connection to self. How connected are you to self? Like how do you have tantra practice with self?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's I've done plenty of mirror gazing into my beautiful pussy in the mirror when they've had like the long mirror on the floor and I've had my legs spread, and
Mm-hmm.
that was uncomfortable, but that's similar to like when, we were told when I first got into my healing journey of staring in the mirror, into my eyes and really that reflection back and what's coming up when I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at myself. And so
Mm-hmm.
going down into that area, that again is another layer of uncomfortableness, like, oh, like, because it just even lately as well, I've been to a couple of breastfeeding classes and just like they've been saying get to know your boobs really well, and I have a really beautiful practice of a night, which is actually really funny because it turns Chris on most nights because I'm like naked, I'm rubbing oil all over me and I'm naked and he's like, oh, it's just so I think like, having get into my body on a different level, being pregnant too. So having, the what Michael did with you, like I just thought that's beautiful because like that wouldn't be uncomfortable for me. It would have been God years ago, but
Mm-hmm.
now because I did a lot of it myself, I adore all the parts of me.
Mm-hmm.
Even though sometimes it can be challenging. And with my body changing right now too, is it's using tantra in a different way of bringing in baby into the tantra practice as well. Like that's been
Mm-hmm.
really a beautiful thing to be like. And it's funny because when we're actually doing different touch, like Chris will go over the belly and things like that, it's he moves so much. Like he's feeling that energy. Like when you did the session on me here,
Mm-hmm.
he was going at it like arms, legs, So I think it's a beautiful energetic practice as well as like that, it can be very physical but that the holding of the vulnerability as well. And I think for me, if you were, thinking I want to start this with my partner, I would really look at doing it with self first as well. If it's feeling uncomfortable to
Absolutely.
go with partner, like if you're thinking, oh, just spend a bit of time doing some tantric practice with self and getting comfortable with you, because if you can get comfortable with you and how things feel for you, then when partner comes involved, it's going to feel obviously different because partner's holding space, and then you can hold some more space. Your capacity grows for that space for your partner as well. And I think that's always been really beautiful. And I'm a touch person. I could just sit and stroke like Chris just without even going anywhere near private parts, like just adore his hands and his face, and I just love his beard, and like I just it's that for me it's the admiration of a soulmate. It's admiration of just someone who I adore and love, and you can thing is you can do tantra with friends. Like it's not just about partners, it's intimacy with friends too. Like I'm not saying like in the sexual side of things. I'm just saying like to be held in a vulnerable space with friends, in different ways. I think that's a really important element to add as well.
Mm. And what I love is that this concept of like deep presence and openness and connection and vulnerability, no matter what your ways are of expressing love towards yourself or others is, you can weave these practices into life. Like you were saying before, you're very physical and you're like, but if someone was really uncomfortable with that,
Mm.
or if people have experienced sexual trauma, and there are body responses to things like touch and stuff, then that's what I love, because we have like breath practices and we have eye gazing, and we have like gentle, like soft massage things, or like I work with a lot of couples and individuals where, where there's been often quite a lot of trauma. And so, I do, when I work with some people, we actually completely take away penetrative sex,
Hmm.
like off the table, so that so we can ease into experiences without there being that, oh, is this going to lead to something, and incorporate all these other ways of closeness. And so regardless of what your erotic blueprint is or your love language or whatever they are, you can find a way to weave this in where you can still come into really connective experiences that cater to you as an
Yeah.
individual. And yeah, especially if you've had some challenging experiences, or your relationship to your body, you're still working on developing more positively, or if there's been sexual trauma, then you can really ease into these without it being like, because that's the thing with our idea of like sex. Often it's like penetration, orgasm, and all these things. And if people think that's the only thing that sex is, and they don't want that, they think they don't want sex. Or they don't want intimacy. And what I really want to share is that intimacy can be so many other
Mm.
things and so many other ways of experiencing it. And you can actually feel closer to yourself and others through not those things as well. There's so much more that's available, and that this really caters to and holds, that most people just don't even know exists.
Mm.
Especially in like Western society, the brutalized version of what we think fucking intimacy is. And don't even like get me started on the impacts of pornography.
Well,
I've
that's
just
that's
actually
going to
spent
be
the last two
definitely an
weeks
episode that
doing,
we're doing. Yeah,
I
like
know, yeah, that's it, yeah. So that's going to be a follow on, like, because yeah, I've just spent the last 2 weeks doing with my work I do at Tutorial, my teaching, doing pornography sessions and teaching year 10s around how to stay safe. So in New Zealand, that's like 14, 15-year-olds. Yeah, because the statistics that are coming out of it are really fucking horrific.
yeah,
Yeah, and so like there's this really bastardized version of sex that a lot of people are seeing, and what Tantra does is brings us back. Like
mm,
brings us back to home within ourselves, brings us back to like the unfiltered, raw, carnal, sensual in all the ways, expressions of love, and that's so multifaceted, and there's so much healing
mm,
that can take place in integrating these practices and these beliefs and ways of being. And then what I love about it is that it's healing that often is also happening with pleasure. So I talk about self pleasure as healing and all these things, but these practices, so I'll give an example of a couple that came to a workshop I was doing, and we were doing an eye gazing exercise, um, and they had been together for 40 years, and they went into this eye gazing, and so going back to the question you asked before, this was a gentleman who you would never, ever, ever label as spiritual. Real New Zealand bloke, like, definitely grew up in that, men don't cry, everything's okay, let's not express our feelings, massively suppressed. Never had never been to workshops before, never done any personal development, never done any spiritual development, like was real, like that bloke, I'm using like quotations. But he wanted to come into the space of this partner, and we went into this eye gazing exercise, and he came out of it and he said, look, he said, I've never felt so much in my whole life. And he said, when I was staring into her eyes, I went back to all of these memories I had of her from the last 40 years. And I saw her again, this beautiful woman that she is, that I'd forgotten, really owned. He's like, I'd forgotten, these other versions of her that she'd been. And he's like, I've never felt like so much emotion in my body. And he said, he even made a reference. He said, oh, I didn't even like feel this much emotion when like his brother passed away. He was like making these connections, and he just said it was just such a healing experience. And this was over like 3 minutes. It was like 3 minutes of eye gazing. And this is like what I want to drop in, is that you can't even grasp what could be possible in terms of your own personal growth and healing in these experiences when you just let yourself see what could be there. Which is what I love. I love it. I love these things now as practices, because I'm always like, I wonder what will happen. Like so actually this is really cool. I'll share this because this is what I knew as well in the last 2 weeks. When Michael and I were away, I said, because we go into like dominance and submission spaces together in our sexual lives. However, because we don't live in the same place, one thing that we've spoken about wanting to do is integrate some of the power dynamic things into our lives. And a really good dom, we'll do a whole episode on dominance and submission. Like a really good dom wants his submissive to thrive, right? And to be the best person that they can be. And so I came up with a list of things for me to have as daily practices or regular practices that I would do, and then check in with him at the end of the week. And if I don't do all of them, then he gets to like sexually punish me.
Yes.
And if I do them, I get a reward.
I love it.
Which I really love, and I work really well like this.
So fun.
So 5 days a week, for 5 days of the 5 of the 7 days, I go into a breath practice. So I do the beta breath. So I do my breath work. I go into, because it's really cute, I made a BDSM acronym with them. So the D is death cookies and Dharma sprints. So that has to do with focus and attention. So Dharma sprints is like unfocused attention on like whether it's like the gym, focused attention, or working on workshops or whatever it is. It's just like sprints of focused attention, getting things done. And then death cookies is all those things that you don't do that are sitting there taking up space in your brain. So getting those done. The S is for sex. So me tapping into my sensual sexual energy, my erotic energy, and really going into a practice, actually just like allowing the energy to be in my body, going into like manifestation, going into creativity, going into these spaces, but really intentionally accumulating sexual energy within my body and having an intention and focus for it. And that can look different. It might be self-pleasure. Most of the time it's like a breath practice, or I use it alongside like manifestation meditations or whatever. And then the M is movement and meditation. So doing some kind of movement, obviously whatever it is, gym or walk or whatever, and then a guided meditation. And so a lot of those are Tantra practices, like in themselves. But it's going like bringing that into, there's so many creative ways to do it. Now we've brought that into our relationship because we don't live in the same place. And then it's great because I'm holding myself accountable to them, but it's also adding into our relationship dynamic. And it's helping me. Like I've noticed in the last week, which has been a hectic fucking week, having these practices that I'm committing to that then have a positive impact on not only my life, but our relationship is just such a big benefit. And so, when we speak about yourself or others, most of my life is these practices for myself because I don't see my partner. We see each other like once every fortnight to 3 weeks. So regardless of whether you're in a relationship or not, the invitation is to explore these things because you will gain so much from it. Like there is a natural positive byproduct anyway. And the more you know yourself and the more you know your body and the more you know you like the places that you like to be touched or you like the breath you like going into or the more you find extra layers of your own self or your own vulnerability, the more of you get to show up with if you are in a connection as well. And I often say to women, it does come up this way around, they'll be like, oh, he doesn't know how to pleasure me. I'm like, do you know how to pleasure you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you do, are you communicating that to them?
Mm.
I'm like, come on, they're not mine. They have different, but if you're heterosexual, they have different bodies. And even if they are a woman, their bodies will be hardwired differently because we are,
Mm.
And so if you want to have better experiences, then take the time to get to know yourself. And play around with things. I give different breath practices. There are particular Tantra breath practices that you can go into, which are beautiful, and they're all around like activating all the way from the root chakra up to crown and using the breath and using movement and building up this like raku fire energy in the body. The more that your body is getting used to doing things like that, the more like turn on you're going to have. And when we look at erotic energy, it is creation energy,
Mm.
it's manifestation energy, it's healing energy. These are why these practices are so powerful, because they're actually helping you to be a more like present but fucking activated higher frequency version of you. So therefore you're going to attract more incredible experiences, and you're going to feel more fulfilled in your life. You're going to feel good about yourself, and these things are like free, always accessible, because all you need is your body.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes like a mirror, yeah, if you're doing like eye gazing with yourself. And like this is the thing I keep coming back to. Why the fuck wouldn't we?
I know.
Why would we not be doing tantra practices every day? Why would we not do it? It's just like I said, that same thing with breath work. I'm like, why would we not do it? It's there. It can take a couple of minutes. And the thing is, I'm gonna be like that person that with love fucking calls people out. If you do not do these things that can be better for you and benefit your life, and you don't do them, you are self-sabotaging.
Yeah.
You are not allowing yourself to be the most fully expressed, authentic version of you. You don't want to find out who you could be. And I understand that. Like I get it from a psychological perspective, but we're here giving you things that could massively enhance your life. You get to choose whether you do them or not, but you're the only one to blame at the end of the day. That's a little bit of tough
Choosing
love
you,
from
isn't
like
it?
Mama
Yeah.
Chow, but
Yeah.
because I want the best for people.
Yeah.
Like I want people to live in their most like turned on authentic
Mm.
selves. And it doesn't just happen. You actually have to take responsibility and put things into action.
I love how you talked about the dom and the submissive. I'd be like, oops, I didn't do what you told me to do. I need punishing. Thank you. But it's fun.
Yeah, but then
It's fun, like
I
all
get
the
a
diff.
reward too. So then it's
Yeah.
like worth it.
Yeah. I just love those scenarios. Like you said, but you've got the openness. It's the openness to different things, like the openness to try. Like you just give a bit that tough love. It's worth trying. Like you said, what have you
Yeah,
got to lose if you're in a
nothing.
relationship and it's like you want to try new things and become more intimate? Like Tantra is definitely the way. Like it isn't about just having more sex, more sex, more sex. It's
No.
trying different things. Like yeah, and that's kind of like why we're talking about it. And I think I'm really big on language. So language has been coming up for me a lot with my birth journey, like with what I want to go into with my birth journey. But when you kind of
Mhm.
apply it to Tantra, is that, when it comes to eye gaze, and if touch is uncomfortable at first because of, sexual trauma and things like that, use words. Our voice is very soothing. Our voice is very powerful. So
Mm.
through eye gazing, what can you say? Like, can you see something? Do you
Mm.
want to tell them what you love about them? How beautiful their eyes are. Like the skin, whatever it is that comes up in the moment, have a practice where you say, hey, well, let's do some eye gazing, and it will, for some people, it'll be really uncomfortable, like staring into people's eyes is it, you just want to look away and you're like, oh my God, which eye do I look at? All that stuff comes up, but feel into that and
Yeah.
and then share that if you need to, like share the vulnerability, share and be like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable staring into your eyes, but I love you so much. And like it,
Mm.
just and as you more you do it, it just becomes this like it's just you two in that present moment in this bubble of just it's just me and you. But we're eye gazing, I see you, you see me. If you want to do it clothed, great. If you want to do it naked, great, whatever works. But it's just like the language of that too. Like where can you bring language in? Like, what are you grateful for about each other? What do you love most about that person? Like the couple you work with that have been together 40 years, like, did he stop telling her like what he absolutely loved about her, what was so beautiful about her when he met her and stuff? Like they must because I've been together so long. And I think that's a big thing Chris and I work on a lot is what we say to each other, how we talk to each other. And I think for people who are moving through different things, like you said, with that sexual trauma, if touch is uncomfortable, start with different things. It's not all about the touch.
Mm.
One thing I love is just holding each other,
Mm.
that because that oxytocin's just
Mhm.
being held.
Mhm.
Like, that's like a baby, just being held, like just it just feels so nice for that. And like, I'm a massive cuddler. I love morning cuddles, like night cuddles, morning cuddles, couch cuddles, floor cuddles, shower cuddles, anything. Like, I love having that intimacy, closeness with the heart, being chest to chest and things like that. So there's many different things, but Shao and I have touched on a couple of things, like a lot of it, like meditation, breath work, eye gazing. And I think if you could just start with one of them and move into like how it felt, journal on it if you need to, message us about it and be like, oh,
Mhm.
we did some breath work today, or we meditated together, or we did some eye gazing and it was uncomfortable, but it was amazing. And this happened, journal on it. And it is a journey. So if you want that more intimacy with self and intimacy with others, like you said, start with self. Start a
Yeah.
tantric practice with yourself. What does that look like? Can you incorporate that into your daily life? It might be that you start off with like a tantric practice and then you have your self-pleasure practice, as a separate thing.
Mhm.
So I think it's just it's the exploration, isn't it? The curiosity, getting to
Mhm.
know more like deep parts of yourself in so many different ways. And that's what I strive for is self-mastery and just finding things that I'm thinking, oh, I didn't really think that, and or that really turned me on, or that didn't turn me on, or whatever it is. And I think it's that level of intimacy that grows and you start to see your partner in such a different light.
Mhm. I love what you've just said. I was gonna say that on the like being okay with not knowing when you're starting out new things as well, and
Mm.
being okay with yeah, with trying out some things and being like, oh, that did not work. Like sometimes you try like positions and you're like, oh, that did not work.
Yeah.
Or like depending on where we are in our cycles, some
Mm.
experiences will feel more comfortable and others won't, and all of that is okay. So if you are going into the space of wanting to dive further, just be okay with the fact that some of it might be a bit confronting and some of it might yeah, might bring some stuff up, but that's where we meet ourselves, is in being okay with that, being okay with I don't want to use the words like it not working out or failing because it doesn't feel right. Yeah, but just being okay with it not being like how maybe you thought it was going to be in your head.
Yeah, let go of the
And
expectations.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then the other thing I thought was really beautiful is when you can bring in these practices for yourself, and then if you're in a relationship container, is that they will support you during all of the times. So, going back to the weekend announcement with Michael is, there were like a lot of emotions that were present, and we were both like really tired too. And I actually said to him, it just came through and I was like, okay, I think this is a thing for us right now. And it was in the afternoon. I said, hey, um, would you be open to like undressing and just lying together naked in bed with absolutely no expectation of anything happening, but just being like naked in bed together? And he was like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so we just like lay down in bed together. And we actually, this is like of course, this is what I intuitively knew. So we just like lay there and started breathing and completely co-regulated our bodies and then fell asleep for like 2 hours
Yeah.
because obviously we
That's
were
what you needed in the
tired
moment. Yeah.
and that's what we needed. But you know, he spoke about something on his podcast, which is funny. He's like, look, if your fucking love language is physical touch and her love language is physical touch, like put your fucking pride aside, even if you're going through conflict, and just like touch each other.
Yeah.
Because it actually helps to co-regulate.
Mm.
And it was beautiful, you know, and we'd like, there was literally like we were lying right next to each other, like skin touching, but
Yeah.
we weren't even like holding, we were just
Yeah.
lying there co-regulating together because we built up the space of being okay with going, here's a practice that we know will help, or there's enough vulnerability to go into this space together, even though, you know, we've been a little bit disconnected and disjointed. That's okay. And it like massively helped. We woke up and we are like, whoa. Like obviously we were both
Yeah.
fucking tired. We both have really busy lives. And we just needed to co-regulate our nervous systems together and have that skin to skin, which was really nourishing. And then rest, you know, and even like I recommend, I know sometimes it's tricky to get there, but I recommend to a lot of couples, you know, when you're going through conflict, and this is something I've asked from Michael before, is like, if sometimes I say, can you just hold my hand as we're in this conversation together? You know, or just like one of my hands, or can we just sit closer together? I actually ask for that kind of physical closeness in uncomfortable conversations, because as soon as you kind of have that connection,
Yeah,
then the
definitely.
connection holds you through maybe the challenging things. And it's being willing to go, we prioritize our connection over everything else.
Yeah.
And so that will be the foundation. We'll grow together with the connection as the foundation. We'll navigate through challenges with the connection as the foundation. This isn't about me being right and you being wrong. This is about how can we continue to support one another and still be in our truths. And so Tantra practices as a means of like conflict resolution,
Definitely.
like amazing, you know, and also to help you regulate through things. The more you integrate these things, the more that things will happen in life, because things happen in life, and you'll be like, okay, like this thing is coming up, I'm feeling I'm getting dysregulated, I'm going to come into some breath, or I'm going to come into like just churning into my body, I'm going to come into like some gentle touch, you know, just to like really help bring me back down.
Yeah.
You know, it's all the nervous
It's
system health
just
stuff
wanted
too,
to touch
isn't
on
it?
really quick before I finish is that, you know, a lot of couples can get into a cycle of, I mean, I this was me in a past relationship where the fallout becomes the makeup sex, and that becomes very toxic, and like the
Yeah.
cycle's there, you know, because that be then you feel wanted, you feel needed, you feel
Mm.
whatever, but it's, if you can kind of use tantra as coming back after, like you said, the
Yeah.
conflict you and Michael had, is that touching
Mm.
hands, you know, like, you know, instead of it just going to the sex to get that adrenaline release of you know, of ejaculation or whatever it is can we come
Yeah.
together in a tantric practice? Because, you know, we've had a bit of conflict today, or you got into a debate or an argument, whatever it is, you know, can we use tantra to have that healing moment together instead of it being makeup sex, you know? So I think that, from my personal perspective, is like tantra and coming together and holding each other. And even you said like falling asleep, you might just, that sometimes it's draining when you've got into a bit of a conflict and your nervous system's like in the fight, flight, whatever it
Mm.
is, and it's like
Or I
falling
think just
asleep
when
naked
you're
on the bed,
fucking
you might just need
tired.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, just, you know, even when you've got, you know, I don't know, for anyone that's got kids,
Yeah.
you know, like sometimes you're just fucking tired.
Mm.
And it's going like, instead of being like, oh, I'm tired. And this happens so much. I'm too tired to have sex. Great. Let's not have sex. Let's look at other ways
Yeah.
you can connect outside of your idea of sex.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like I know in my relationship, we have massive lives and our output is massive,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, for two individuals. And so it's coming together and be like, let's still choose to connect with the capacity we have right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know, instead of this idea of like, well, we don't have a sex life because, you know, we're raising kids and we're tired and we've got this. And I understand that those
It's
things
not all
impact
about
it.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, but when you have an idea of what intimacy and sex is,
Mm.
then you're only saying no to that, but you could be saying yes to so many other things.
Exactly. Yeah. It's exploration for sure. Yeah. It needs to be out there more. That's why I think talking about it's really good, because it's pushing it out there for like, it's been around for like centuries, like centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries. It's not new. It's, you know, it's,
No.
so I think we need to come back to that. And it's, I think that's why it's gonna be really, really great to have the next episode around porn and pornography, because
Yeah.
that can lead into why we have an issue with tantra, because it's all about the sex and oh my God and all this, like, you know, so I think moving into pornography next week is going to be It's going to be good. Yeah, it's going to be a good topic to kind of follow this on and why tantric practices are really important. They should be doing porn videos about tantra. like have a
Totally.
site with like
Well,
just
I mean, I'm going to put it out there. Like maybe you'll see some conscious OnlyFans at some point. I don't
yeah, maybe.
know. That
Business
conversation
idea,
maybe
ding
has come up in
ding.
my
Yeah, there's like
relationship.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely it's like yeah, that's imagine that like setting up a conscious OnlyFans, that's so funny. Yeah, like
We've
that's
so
needed.
seriously been a conversation.
Yeah, but it'll be really good to
Um,
talk about it next week. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for anyone that knows me, lives in the Bay or anything, I have actually started running some tantra workshops in different spaces. I do have a new one that was going to be it is going to be invite only. So if people do know me personally, then reach out. There I've got one booked in for next month. I'm sure I'll be doing more as well. And potentially I can do them online because it is something I'm really, really passionate about. And also book recommendation, Urban Tantra.
Mm.
100% read it. It is one of the best books that I've read that's on it. And a lot of people will talk about urban tantra as well as opposed to traditional. So Barbara Carellis has wrote this fantastic book, and it gives lots of practices and talks about the history and talks about kind of how she kind of came to bring in her style of tantra in it as well. It's a great book.
Awesome. I'll check it out.
Mm,
Yeah.
yum.
Yum yum.
Mm.
Yeah, it's great. I'm excited, but I think next week the pornography stuff's going to be really potent for a lot of people. Yeah, so we're kind of giving you a little teaser there. So check it out for next week.
Yeah, I might put up some stats for you to guess in our stories around pornography. See how close you
Yeah.
guys can get, and I'll reveal them. Yeah, in our episode, and it's pretty fucking horrific. Some of the
Mm,
stuff.
mm,
And it will become from like a really inclusive conversation.
yeah.
It's not shaming people that have or do or whatever watch pornography, but it's about educating people, and especially
Yeah.
if you're teenage parents, like
Hmm.
particularly if you're teenage parents, it's going to be an episode you're not going to want to miss. Yeah.
Yes, we hope that this episode has been informative and exciting and yummy,
Sexy.
sexy, and yeah, all the parts. But again, always if anything's come up and you want to ask questions, reach out to us. We're always here, So just
Yeah.
message us on Instagram.
We love you.
Love you lads. Have fun with those practices. Take care, guys.
Tell us some sexy stories.